Joining me now here in the studio is Annette Hauser. She is the Executive Director of the Washington, D.C. office of the Bertelsmann Foundation, a non-partisan organization that promotes transatlantic cooperation. And she's a member of the European Council on Foreign Relations. Also with us from Athens is Stelios Kouloglou. He is a member of the European Parliament and sits with the left-wing Syriza party. And joining us from New York is Levin. He's an advisor to governments and agencies worldwide. He's also a member of the board of the Liechtenstein Foundation for State Governance. Thanks to all of you for joining us. Stelios, let me start with you, and let's begin with this Greek debt deal. Germany helped push that deal through. Is it a good deal for Greece, or is it a bad deal for Greece?
No, it was a very bad deal, imposed under very harsh circumstances, under threats, blackmailing, and ultimatums. Unfortunately, it was not, after 5 or 6 years of recession, you can't find one serious economist in the whole world who will tell you that you need more austerity. Greece has needed some growth, but the government and Tsipras, the Prime Minister, were forced to accept the deal. Otherwise, they were facing open bankruptcy. So we'll try our best to implement, since we agreed and we signed the agreement, we will try our best to implement it, but it's very difficult. And I think it's going to be, it's not going to be profitable, both for Greece, but also for the European partners and creditors.
Annette, this is what the New York Times said about Germany's role in resolving or trying to resolve the Greek debt crisis. The Times said, by taking what sounded to many as an aggressive, punishing, contemptuous tone towards Greece, the German leadership may have undercut its moral authority. Do Germans see it that way as well?
I mean, first, I think no one would doubt that Germans are very aware and very sensitive about their history. And they're also very aware of the fact that Germany, as the biggest country in Europe right now, has a very special role to play, because obviously there is an absence of leadership from Paris and London. So we have been more or less left alone when it comes to the big three in Europe dealing with the Greek crisis. And I would say, obviously, what we have seen in the last weeks unfolding between Athens and Berlin was not the best way how you should negotiate within the European Union. And I think the Germans have more or less also understood and learned a little bit more that a country like Greece, that has been undergone through so much in the last years with austerity, has to be given, to a certain extent right now, also more flexibility when it comes to spending and investing in the future of the country.
Was there a problem with the German tone here, and did Germany undercut its moral authority in Europe?
I would disagree. Germany and the German Chancellor and also the German Finance Minister tried to play a very constructive role. And don't forget, it's not only politicians talking, it's the public perception and the media that plays a large role here. And obviously, the media on both sides, in Greece as well as in Germany, has blown to a certain extent way out of proportion these kind of negotiations that were going on in Brussels between the two parties.
Daniel, is there something of an irony here? After all, Germany got back on its feet after World War II through the German, at least the Marshall Plan. And then, of course, in 1953, we had that conference where German debt was discussed. And Germany had half its debt cancelled. Yet it took such a hard line with Greece.
You make a good point. You can actually go farther back than just the Marshall Plan after World War II. If you go after World War I, the European allies imposed very harsh conditions in the Versailles Treaty on Germany, which had been the aggressor in the war. And the United States came in and eased those conditions and provided financial support for Germany. That only ended in 1929 with the Wall Street crash, where the US then demanded immediate payback, which triggered an immediate hyperinflation, unemployment, mass unemployment, and so on in Germany, and the rise of Nazism, as we know. Now you fast forward to the Marshall Plan, 1948, after World War II. The US was very generous in providing Europe assistance. Germany was the third largest recipient with 11% of the funds. And in fact, much of that was debt relief, interestingly enough. And that debt relief was supposed to have been cancelled at German unification in 1990 and was not. So to some extent, yes, there's a bit of an irony in that. But of course, Germany will also point out that, in fact, they stuck to the terms of that relief and those assistance packages in the 20th century, while Greece does not. That's, of course, part of the polemic now.
And Stelios, what are Greeks saying about the German role in this debt deal? Do they think Germany has become too powerful? Do they think that Germany has been bullying Greece?
Well, you know, sadly, what we see is that history is repeating itself, and Germany is repeating the same mistakes it has done during the past century, you know. And it's not only the Greeks that are saying that. Almost all Europeans are saying that. Even the Jürgen Habermas, the great German philosopher, after the negotiations, the agreement said that in one night, Merkel destroyed all what Germany has built after the Second World War, you know. And the idea was, after the Second World War, that Germany will never seek a German euro, but a European Germany. And this was the deal. And Mrs. Merkel and Mr. Schäuble completely changed the course. And now we have seen the same thing, where we see people frightened, where we see people, not only in Greece, but in other countries, being frightened about the German power, the punishing culture of, of making mistakes, and also this culture of reprisals. Because, what happened with Greece is that after the referendum and the no to referendum, the final agreement that was imposed on Greece was much tougher than the one week before. And this was a punishment for the vote. And then we have also another vote in January, which is, according to this vote, the Syriza has been elected. And these two mandates have been punished as a reprisal. So we see, what we see now is abolishing the very ideas of the European foundation, the ideas of democracy. And you know who is profiting from all that? The extreme right. Because in Greece we have the Golden Dawn, the neo-Nazi party. They are adoring Hitler anyway, the old Führer of Germany. And now what they see now and what they are profiting of is that whether the people vote or no vote, it makes no difference. So right. Who is taking profit of that? The parties that are against the elections. That's the extreme right all over Europe.
And is this history repeating itself? There was a story in the Guardian newspaper which quoted the Munich sociologist Ulrich Beck. He's just published a new book, and in that book he says the Eurozone catastrophe, and these are his words, has given birth to a political monster, a German Europe.
I would totally disagree that history is repeating itself here. Don't forget, for the German Chancellor Angela Merkel, the Greek crisis was and still is a very delicate balancing act, because on the one side she wants to keep this club of 28 and the Eurozone countries together, and on the other side she has to make sure that her own government coalition with her own center-right party and the Social Democrats can survive, because don't forget, we need to have our national parliaments on board when it comes to the Greek rescue packages. And you see right now a lot of resistance, not only in Germany, but all over Europe, when it comes to the citizens that are saying something is wrong here with the European Union, the way we govern, the way we negotiate among ourselves. And that this is the fact, and this has resulted to a certain extent in the rise of these left and right-wing parties all over Europe, and Greece is just one example for that. And I think for Merkel, the Greek crisis is the ultimate stress test right now to demonstrate that she is able to hold the European Union together. Has Germany done everything right in this crisis? No, not at all. I would totally agree that Germany has to had to be more compromising when it comes to giving Greece more flexibility on spending in this situation.
Right, but could Germany have been more flexible? Stelios just referred to Wolfgang Schäuble, the German finance minister, and he said on more than one occasion, look, there are rules by which the EU is governed, by which it is run. Those are the rules. Everyone agreed to it. We have to live by those rules.
Right, and the Syriza government was seen as the new kids, the new rebels on the block who wanted to change the rules of the club. And I think one thing is clear, you can't just change overnight the rules of the club because you just gain power. And I think we have to make clear here that the Eurozone crisis and the Greek crisis is not only a monetary and a financial crisis. At the end of the day, it's a crisis about European democracy. Because don't forget, when Helmut Kohl, former German Chancellor, and his counterpart at the time, French President Mitterrand, created the Euro and the Eurozone, they made clear from the beginning that the Eurozone is only one pillar and should be only one pillar of the future of the European Union. The other pillar should be the European political union. And we have missed out on the opportunity building a political union so far.
Right, and Daniel, looking at that broader picture of European democracy, there has been opposition to the German role within Germany itself. The former German foreign minister, Joschka Fischer, this is what he said. He said, during the long night of negotiations over Greece on July 12th, 13th, something fundamental to European unity cracked. Since then, Europeans have been living in a different kind of Europe. He went on to say that as far as Europe is concerned, Germany now seems primarily interested in its national interest. Did the Greek bailout negotiations change the way Europe is run and what's going on in Europe right now?
I think it's obviously a loaded question. First of all, Joschka Fischer, of course, is a kindred spirit with the governing party in Greece right now, so he may feel a little more solidarity on the political level than on the national level. I think we should, though, keep in mind that the sort of generous approach towards Greece and the larger debt forgiveness was advocated really just by 3 countries in Europe, which is France, Italy, and Cyprus. And in fact, you have a coalition government in Slovakia that collapsed because it approved the last bailout. So I think there is, in particular among smaller countries in Europe and in particular among former countries of the Eastern Bloc in Europe, quite a harsh approach towards Greece right now. For example, the temporary suspension of the euro in Greece was advocated by Slovenia before Germany ran with that idea. So I think the devil's a little bit in the detail here, and we have to be fair. Of course, it's not helpful if Germany depicts Greece as the beggar with the golden bowl and Greece retaliates with reparation claims. This doesn't lead to any good place. And I agree with both my co-panelists that the ultimate victim will be the moderate center, not just in Greece, but in other countries. We see the rise of Euroscepticism, and we see the rise of fringe parties in several European countries now.